All right, so this is gonna be um deck showcase video on Chien Pao or the Brilliant Stars Prismatic Evolution format. Um, so I made a deck profile video about Chien Pao for this format, and was pretty convinced that Chien Pao was a pretty good pick for this format as a deck to like main, and the format's really shaken up a lot, and so kind of stepped away from that for a bit. But now I believe again that Chien Pao is a good pick for this format. So I'm gonna do a deck showcase video for it. Um, so yeah, if you want more of an in-depth look, then you can check my Chien Pao deck profile video about it I made for this format. And yeah, so I'm gonna show the list before we begin. So the list I'm using for this video is Chien Pao Switch, the list I kind of finalized for this format. And yeah, haven't changed any cards for it. The exact same list that I showed in the deck profile video. So if you want a more in-depth look into this list, then you can check that video out. All right. So just gonna get right into it. So Chien Pao, yeah, I think Chien Pao is a very good deck in this format. Nothing wrong with it. Deck's very strong, does what it's supposed to do, and it's very effective at what it does. Right. Um, Sometimes it just may feel that you don't have enough resources to close a game, and so people are kind of deterred from playing the deck. But it's not because you don't have enough resources to play to win the game. It's just the deck's very hard to play, so you can't just play it on autopilot. You have to really sit there and think out your plays and really get it down to a science. So my opponent let me go first here, and yeah, uh, Chien Pao, you want to go first because Chien Pao is a combo deck, so you want your opponent to play the game as much as possible so you can make more informed decisions. Right. So I go first and I open Greninja, so I'm feeling pretty good. And yeah, right. Um, Chien Pao, yeah, Chien Pao is still pretty strong in this format, especially with decks like Dragon Ball going around. So yeah. So here, I just want to get my board out first before I start drawing because I opened with no supporters. So I have two nest balls. I'm just gonna use them first, and instead of using the energy I drew to use conceal cards, I'm just going to thin my deck with Silvery Chill, get two energies, and use conceal cards that way. Right. So, sorry. Um, yeah. So, you know, this is a pretty good turn. One for Chien Pao. You get Greninja off, and you get your Silvery Chill off. So, yeah, whether you draw into your next combo doesn't really matter. You start off pretty well, right? And that's ultimately kind of how you have to approach combo. It's not that you're, oh, I need to just get my whole board set up on turn one, and then I could just get a huge knockout turn two. No, you just want to let your opponent play the game, right? And especially in Gardevoir matchup, you don't want to, overplay your hand and not have any resources because Gardevoir you need everything to win. So yeah, my opponent started out pretty well. They're going second, so if they're playing Gardevoir, they're going second. So what do you expect, right? And yeah, um, this is Chien Pao switch. So if they don't drop a Manaphy, then I can get a really hot turn two, and I can just um Moonlight Shuriken turn two, and the game's pretty much over after that, right? Here they played a really weird line. They only benched two Ralts, and they pushed Fluttermane. Um, yeah, I mean that's fine, right? Not really, because you're just putting cards on your bench that you're not really using. You already have two bench slots dedicated to Manaphy and Greninja, so benching Fluttermane it's pretty reckless in my opinion. I don't think it's a very good move because Gardevoir really relies on having a good bench space. So yeah, I just go conceal cards first because I have Superior in my hand. So if I hit Arita, which I did, then I can attack, right? So yeah, remember it's combo, so you just have to be very decisive. Your opponent can't really be getting unnecessary information from you, right? You play your hand quick, and you go and you give your opponent your time to play, right? And then you can make more informed decisions based on what they're playing, right? If they have a lot of resources, which Gardevoir does, right? Then you can, you know, force them to use resources where they don't want to use it, right? And that's how you get an advantage against Gardevoir. Because ultimately, Gardevoir is designed to be very broken, right? It's designed to be very overpowered, and so um, it's when it feels like wow, your opponent just has everything. It's because they do. It's because they actually have everything. Because that's just how the deck is designed, right? So you just got to be very decisive. Let your opponent play the game, right? Don't get too upset about oh they're playing this way that way. Play your game, and you'll win. So yeah, like they put Flutterman. They don't really have a line here anymore. Um, unless they have Candy Gardevoir and like some Miracle Earthen Vessel or something, which they don't. Um, so yeah, they're just look. I played my game, and now they're playing very aggressively, right? Um, and so yeah, they're playing on behind from that now, right? They benched the Flutterman. They thought they were going to be able to buy a few turns, and now they have to put down the Bravery Charm, and they have to try to get a return here, right? And they get 200 G's off the Ion, which is pretty miraculous. And yeah, you see, they're really starting to question kind of what resources they want, right? They have to get rid of Artivan Iona there. Gardevoir really thrives when they can just Iona every single turn. Um, and to get rid of an Iona is pretty painful for them for sure, whether they realize it or not. So yeah, they're just setting up here. So they're very plentiful in resources because they're just discarding energies all willy nilly, right? Discarded dark energy, they probably have a pretty high hand, right? A lot of night stretches, a lot of super rods, stuff like that. Yeah, and they're just trying to buy time, right? That's what Gardevoir does ultimately, right? Gardevoir has a lot of resources, can do a lot of things, and ultimately they thrive on buying time. So yeah, he tries to lock my backs on active. I have switch. I can play the game. All right. And it's perfect math. 120 damage. He loses the Brave Charm, and he has to get the Driftloom back. No reason to overextend here. I have one Chien Pao. It's full health. He doesn't have a KO for next turn. He doesn't have 220 damage on the board. And so I don't have to bench a Chien Pao here. I can just play my one Chien Pao and just keep playing the game. So yeah, you see, like he's really stretching here. You can tell he's probably not a great Gardevoir player just because his bench management is not that great. He just benched Greninja very aggressively, discarding his Monkey Doors. He's really he's playing very cocky, right? Like he thinks he's just playing Gardevoir, and so as a result, he's just gonna just run me over, right? And he draws into the Candy Gardevoir, which is pretty miraculous, but still, it's definitely a very cocky uh Gardevoir style, and yeah, I picked up on it really quickly because it's like, yeah, right. You can even see me emoting. I'm just like, okay, yeah, you're gonna try to buy time again, right? It didn't work the first time. You're gonna try again, right? Like, it's very obvious this is what Gardevoir does. Look at my board. Everything can attack. Everything can get out of active. I'm not worried about you trying to lock me in active, right? So yeah, he's trying to buy time. He's wasting all his resources, which he has a lot of. These guys usually play 3, 4 gust, so he can just use his resources as he wishes, right? It's pretty annoying, but you're playing a deck that's designed to be very overpowered. That's what you can do, right? So yeah, I have Switch, just thinning, and yeah, I'm seeing him like he's using his resources as he wishes. So I'm like, okay, well, it's like I'll just attack with Baxcalibur, right? Like it's not you're not gonna trick me into using resources. I know how the game works. And when you're playing an overpowered deck that pretty much carries you, right? You're not gonna really learn the game, right? So yeah, he has to use a nice stretcher to bring out his monkey dory. Right? You don't want to do that. You want to be using it to get like a dark energy after the monkey dory is already benched. And yeah, right. So yeah, right. Like Gardevoir has the agency to make very careless plays, and so it's important when you're playing against Gardevoir that you don't get daunted um, by how careless they can play, how easily they can get back into the game. You just know your win condition and you play to it. So here I preemptively set up two Baxcaliburs, knowing that one way that another way that they can get on top of this other ways that they're stacking to get back into the game, which is locking a Pokemon inactive and preventing me from using abilities, is that he can knock out a lone Baxcalibur. So I preemptively set up two Baxcaliburs while I was setting up my board to play the game, so that when he tries to play the strategy of trying to knock out my lone Excalibur, he realizes, well, oh gosh, he doesn't have a lone Excalibur, right? So he starts to panic, basically. Right? And I think the game bugs here. He does 250 damage. So yeah, I drew Pop Pad. I was just checking my resources. Usually, like I said in my deck profile videos, Pop Pads are usually to get like process orders back. But Uh, I know it's a long game. I'm not gonna get up, let up for a single moment, thinking, "Oh, I have a good prize lead." Guard four, prize lead doesn't matter, right? They push a guard four, you can't knock it out. The game's over, right? So you have to count your resources throughout the game. Doesn't matter what your opponent's thinking, you have to count your resources because your opponent not going to count your resources for you, and it's just you and them. Like this is not a team game, right? So yeah, I just need my super rod, counted that I'm only going to need maximum one more Chien Pao, so I can discard one Chien Pao. And I can set up the same play again, right? Um, Prevent them from knocking out my lone Baxcalibur, right? Because I know that's what their win condition is. They know they know that they are up against a better opponent than them, right? So they're like, okay, well, only way I can win is by not letting my opponent play the game, right? So I'm just like, okay, cool, right? Like that's how you have to play combo. You don't try to win as fast as possible. You have to play the game, right? And here I force him to overextend, right? Um, I'm at two prizes, full health, Chien Pao. I got 200 shot on the board. All I need is superior, and I win, right? And so they have to knock out my energy here. So because they have to start whittling down my resources because I've been managing them so well. So yeah, they're just running hot, right? And yeah, they're at pretty much this point they're defeated, right? And it's pretty much just up to their deck. It's not up to them. And that's kind of the downside of playing decks like this, right? Like the upside is that you're gonna have a high win percentage because your deck's designed to be very overpowered. But the downside is once your opponent has caught up to your game, you are pretty much have no more control over the game, right? And it's just up to your deck to win. And that's why I don't really like playing decks like this. If I can't just win, then I don't want to play it. So yeah, even though these decks, they're fun, popular, meta, whatever you want to call it, they have downsides too. They're not just all good, you know. And that's important part of understanding card games is that it's a lot of testing, study, and inspection and investigation that needs to be done, and discovery that needs to be done to really understand kind of why you win and why you lose ultimately. Because if you're not playing to win or playing to lose or whatever, then I mean you're just playing a very confused game that really just messes with the continuity of games. meaning whether the game survives, whether the game uh, makes more sense, you know, whether the game has more of one archetype or more of another archetype. Because if you've been paying attention to card games, um, the main style of archetypes that get printed are control archetypes. And so that has nothing to do with all control, it's just more fun. It's just that, these developers are really just shooting in the dark half the time because they don't really get good data back from their players, right? And so if people are just playing weird games where they're just showing up to just have fun or just socialize or something like that, then you get a lot of problems from the developers, right? And that's kind of why I like Pokemon. That Pokemon doesn't really bow down to their players. They play their game, meaning they are very committed to their philosophy, and whether their players will tell them that they're gonna all boycott or they're gonna, you know, completely burn the market to the ground or burn their games to the ground or whatever, they don't care. They stick to their guns, and that's what they do, right? And whether that's why people like Pokemon or not doesn't really matter, right? That's Pokemon's philosophy, right? So, love it or hate it, as they say, because that's just how Pokemon's gonna do their thing. So yeah, right? Like, um, my opponent's pretty defeated here. I'm 5-1, 4-1, sorry, and they're just like, damn, I'm playing Gardevoir, and I can't just go 2-2-2. Wow, like that's incredible, right? Because you can't go 2-2-2 versus Gardevoir because they're mainly their only two prize there is a Gardevoir EX, right? So Gardevoir's game is 2-2-2 in terms of the prize map. But yours is like a 5-4-3-2-1 usually, right? So it's very hard to win against Gardevoir when not only are they slowing you down, but you have to play a 5-4-3-2-1-0, right? So yeah, they just come up with some wonky combo here where like they charge up the Gardevoir and then they attack with it and just hope I don't have the energy. Because I just need superior energy retrieval. Go for a miracle, basically. Like, yeah. So when it comes to games like this, yeah, people really lean into miracles. When it compared to games like, if you're talking about other competitive sports, right? Like, music industry, film industry, sport like athletic industry, right? Games like basketball, soccer, tennis, etc. Right? Um, you know, you have to really have a good game plan set out, right? Whereas in games that are more intellectual and more thought based, planning based, execution based, right? There's a lot more room for error. And so as a result, you can play a more um you can play a more chaotic game, basically, where you're not winning a lot most of the time, you're not losing a lot of times, and ultimately you just come out with a victory at the end either way, right? And that's kind of what attracts people of all walks of life to these types of games, right? That kind of ability to just win whenever you feel like ultimately, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of what my opponent went for on this turn. And I'm just like, all I need is literally just a superior and I win. I whiffed. But I had a backup, so I went to the backup, and yeah. And I already counted their energy from beforehand before I even checked. I was just checking how many energy there was in here. I knew they only had 4 psychics left, so they can only do 160 with Screamtail. And I know that they have, even if they have Review Charms, I pushed their mana fee, so they used their Turo already. I think they used their Power Pad already. And so they have to only do max 160 here. So yeah, they use Moonlit Hill, bites them in the butt, right? And I was planning to try to get rid of the Moonlit Hill too, right? But I guess, again, right? If your opponent doesn't really have a good game plan set out and they're just, you can just rip their board apart, right? Then, you know, you do it, just rip their board apart. So yeah, my opponent gave me a pretty good hand here. I don't know. That means I can draw 3 more cards, including from Mew. Gives me more outs to Superior, Rita, etc. And I preemptively power patterned Rita's back, knowing that I was gonna probably need it to win the game. So yeah, I have like 4 outs here, minus 3 cards I just got put in the part of my bench. So uh 4 outs, basically 10 cards to draw, right? So that's pretty good odds. It's like 40% pretty much, which is really high, right? In Pokemon in terms of odds. Like if you go to the game, you don't usually get 40% odds. I think the only move that has 40% odds is Double Iron Bash, I think, from Melmetal. Other than that, most moves usually have like 10%, right? And if you're lucky, 20%. And if you're super lucky, 30%, right? So yeah, I guess he thought he was gonna get a bug again. He doesn't actually. He just goes to knock out my lone backs. He doesn't even realize that doesn't matter because he has a 10 HP Pokemon active, so I literally just need 1 energy, right? So evolve. I can +2 here off the restart. Still with I have Dunsparce. I draw 5 cards, including my top deck, and I hit the arena. Right, game over. My opponent completely devastated. Right. Um. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So that's Chien Pao, right? Um. Yeah. It's probably one of my favorite decks I've played. The last few formats, and um. Yeah, it would be a very high meta deck if the format was more tested for sure. But Pokemon trading card game still in its infancy, so can't really knock people for not being as proficient in the game yet, right? So yeah, if you want a more in depth look at that list and Chien Pao Baxcalibur as an archetype in general, then yeah, you can check out my deck profile video about it. And yeah, thank you for listening, and see you in the next video.